Okay, great. So I'll get going. I'm going to introduce and then I'll come to you, David. 1 second.
Okay.
So welcome, everyone. Welcome to our first regenerative soil series. I'm Abby Rose, co-founder of VitaCycle. We make digital tools to support regenerative farming, including Soil Mentor, which helps farmers to learn what healthy soils and flourishing biodiversity look like on their farms. Some of you may have heard of Soil Mentor, some of you are already maybe using it, but Soil Mentor helps to monitor and record changes above and below ground, and then to use these observations that you make to inform decisions and keep everyone in the loop. So this new series of webinars explores the conversation around soil and taking a regenerative approach to farming, all through the lens of observation. Over the years, we've noticed a pattern, really, that so many of the people we work with who have a lot of success farming regeneratively, they're very confident taking the time to really look at their surroundings. And then they use those observations to inform their learning and decision making. We've also noticed that many people are very cautious about spending too much time observing, as it can feel, I guess, in our world today, it's seen as kind of unproductive or a waste of time when you could be out actually doing something. So this series aims to highlight the power of observation, where and when observation can be a highly valuable tool, and also how observation has become a key part of our guests on-farm regenerative toolkit. So today, our first interview of the series is with the brilliant David Cooil from Ballagony. Oh, sorry if I absolutely murdered that. You can tell me how to say it correctly in a second, which is a dairy and beef farm on the Isle of Man. Farmers on the Isle of Man actually have the opportunity to use Soil Mentor as part of their government soil health initiative, including David. And this is how we first learned about your experience of shifting to a more regenerative approach on your farm. So David, so great to have you here. And can you introduce yourself and maybe tell us a bit about your farm today?
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, it's Ballagone Farm.
Ballagone.
Which is probably a Manx name, as a bit. So yeah, we're based in the south of the Isle of Man. Don't know, for anybody who doesn't know, the Isle of Man is halfway between England and Ireland, in the middle of the Irish Sea. We're quite lucky. We've got quite a mild, damp environment from the Gulf Stream. Maintains us we never really get too much of a cold winter and stuff. We round about 50 inches of rain, depending on the year. And then, so Ballagone Farm is a partnership between me and my brother Robert, and then my wife, his wife, children. He's got 4 children, I've got 2 children. And then we've got a full-time member of staff who's young, keen, enthusiastic, and young, keen, enthusiastic makes me feel younger and more enthusiastic again, which is a bit of a blessing. And so we're spread over 3 farms in the south of the island, from one in Port St Mary up to where I am in just above Ballabeg in Ronagh. We farm just over 600 acres, 640 acres. Some of that is scrub. We milk 230 cows at Ballagone in a split block calving system. So we calve about 170 cows in the springtime, and then the remainder are calved in the autumn, to give us a more level milk profile for the creamery. So there's only 28 dairy farms on the island, and we need an amount of liquid milk every day going through the creamery. So we're encouraged to calve either all year round or split block is the way we do it. All calves are retained on the farm and then moved off to either the Ballacregan farm in Port St Mary or Ballaculferic farm, which is about halfway between. And then they're all reared up either as replacement heifers or as beef. We try to do as much as we can from grazed grass. So the dairy cows are grazed. We aim to start grazing on the 1st of February, obviously weather dependent, and we would start by going out for 2 hours after morning milking, and then we would put them back into the sheds onto concrete to save them doing any damage. And then young stock, we'll aim to get out from early March, depending on grass availability. And then we're not scared to put them back in the sheds if we have to. If we we start to do damage. We can handle a little bit of damage, but we try not to make too much damage. Yeah, we use sex semen on the best 25% of the cows, and then everything else is either Angus or stabilizer bulls. And we're majoring on Angus really for because if we send them off the island for slaughter, we can get the Angus premium on them, which is always worth having. And then yeah, young stock are rotationally grazed. We could do better. We could go tighter. We could go harder. We try to manage the system to give ourselves a fairly easy life alongside, because we've both got families. We need to spend time with families. So yeah, most of the things we try to do, there's a balance between working too much and seeing your family, isn't there? So yeah,
Definitely. Yeah, and I guess that's part of, in my view, what it means to farm regeneratively is also that your life works alongside the farm. It's all part of it.
Yeah.
Great. So yeah, maybe you could just share a little bit about, I know at a certain point in your journey, you had a moment in time where you observed dung beetles in a cow pat for the first time. And that observation, it really kind of started you on a different path that led to a whole different approach on your farm. So maybe
So,
you could just talk me through that.
So yeah, when we started milking cows in 2017, we were beef and sheep up until then, and we transitioned over, built a parlour, borrowed quite a lot of money, transitioned over to milking, and we aimed for a New Zealand type system. So we were quite heavy nitrogen use. I wouldn't have said we were very heavy nitrogen use, but we were a fairly high nitrogen use. I liked the farm to look immaculate, so we were spraying every single weed we seen. We were spraying docks, we were spraying thistles. We had a routine with the vets where we were applying fly treatment to the cows every 6 weeks through the summer to keep flies away. We were routinely worming the cows prior to service, so 3 weeks prior to service, and we were doing all these things. And part of that, I was measuring the grass with a plate meter. So I was walking the farm once a week, and we were running down at like an 18 to 21 day rotation at peak, and we could grow grass. We were, the farm looked amazing. I think we came third in the British Grassland Management competition back then, and it's what I thought was, we were pinging, it was really good and everything looked immaculate. And but I was running around like a headless chicken, and constantly you had the sprayer on the quad trying to kill every thistle you hadn't got with the big sprayer, and you just seemed to be chasing your tail. And then as I was measuring the grass, the cow pats would be, you can nearly date them across the paddock, so from each rotation. And when you got to like round 5 or 6, there was a massive amount of cow pat across the paddock. And then one particular spring, I don't know what happened, but whether I was lazy or something got away from me, but I forgot to put the fly spray on the cows, or I forgot to worm them, one or the other. I don't know exactly what happened. But I was measuring the grass, and I was like, cow pats were sort of breaking down. So I just turned the top of a dung pat over, and I found a dung beetle. And I thought what I thought was a dung beetle. So I took a picture of it, and I sent it to a Twitter group called Dung Beetles for Farmers UK. And then I got a message back a few hours later saying, yes, that's a dung beetle. I think it's this species. I can't tell without putting under a microscope or all this. And basically extolled a few of the benefits of them. And I'd heard of them, but I'd never really looked into them. So I thought, that's great. We've got a dung beetle. So about 3 weeks later, I got another message from a lady called Sally Ann Spence, who is basically a world-renowned entomologist who specializes in dung beetles. And she said, I'm on the Isle of Man. Would you have time to meet me? And I was like, yeah, sure I could, but I'm going away tonight for 2 days, back Thursday night, Friday morning. She said, well, I'm here till Friday night, so can we meet on Friday? Brilliant. So she came to the house, and we had a bit of a chat, and then she said, let's go out in the field. So we went out in the field, and we started rooting through dung pats, and we were finding a few quite small dung beetles. And then she set to telling me and my brother about dung beetles and the benefits of them and what have you. And then also what was harming them, which was everything we were putting on the cows and nitrogen fertilizer and everything like that. And I was like, well, right, I can't see a negative to having dung beetles. So I then took myself on a journey of trying to find myself a way to farm without them things. And then, and that's like, I'm using observation to count them, check that their progress, check they're around. We're fecal egg counting, and then watching the animals for signs of worms and stuff like that. You know, we haven't got fully away from wormers. We don't use them in the cows, especially when they're at grass. If we have to, we'll worm them when they're housed in the winter. But I've spent more time now looking at the animals and looking at the way they're performing. We've changed our rotations around. We've stretched the rotations out to try to break worm cycles. With the young stock, we'll move them around. We don't put them in, they're not in a steady 24-day rotation. They might be 29 days between paddock, or it might be 24. You know, there's no set routine to it. We sort of trying to break them worm cycles so that we can manage the animals to the benefit of the dung beetles, but also we need them animals to perform. So there's a bit of a balance in that.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's so interesting to hear how from that one observation, and obviously the influence of then getting all the information from Sally Ann Spence, and I've met her as well, and she's an amazing woman, and really, yeah, she knows her dung beetles. But that combined learning, it sounds like now your farming operation is actually all about observation and then responding to your observations. And would you say it's a more complex farming system that you're using now, rather than before it was like a recipe where you always did the fly treatment then you always did 21-day rotation, and it was kind of like implementing a recipe, whereas now it sounds more like you're responding to what you see. Is that fair?
Yeah, so we were pretty much farming to the calendar. You know, there's a routine written on the calendar that we shall put the wormer on the cows on this date, or you know, the week beginning, and we will fly spray week beginning, and then 6 weeks later, you know, and it's a recipe, and in lots of respects, it's simple and it's routine, you know, but I'm not really one for routines anyway, so it's not been a big issue for me to break. But the dung beetles were probably we're a little bit of a catalyst into the way we now farm, or the way we're trying to farm, I suppose. Like in that system we were in with ryegrass and clover lays, if we got any weather challenge, like dry weather or wet weather, the fields would either go really soft and cut up really quickly, or we would burn out and we would run short of grass. So we've sort of set ourselves down a route to try to put more diversity into the swards. We're out with the spade. We're digging holes. We're looking for rooting depth. Where if there's a cap layer, we're looking at ways we can either use. I try to use a plant to break that pan if we can. Or if we have to, we'll go in with a spiked aerator or a subsoiler, but we do try not to wear metal and burn diesel, because we're paying contractors to do it as well, so it's always an expense. But we're just trying to find ways to make the farm more resilient, and I think a more natural way of farming, using less chemicals. By no means have we stopped using sprays, and we haven't stopped using nitrogen. We still use them, but we're more judicious with when we use them, how we use them, and we're trying to minimize as best we can. We're trying to use our own farmyard manure and stuff like that. But yeah, them trying to use roots and like looking at the soil to see why we're having this issue. Why aren't them roots getting down through? Why is there a pan layer? What depth's the pan layer? You know, how can we fix it more than, we probably just used to rely on the bag or the spray can.
Because it sounds like, going back to the introduction, it's like there's something about now you're very happy to spend your time going and and digging that hole or looking to see, understand more what's happening in the field.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you said in a way being more responsive is actually more suited to how you do things rather than systematic. But was there a time where you were like having to choose between just getting in the tractor and delivering on a program versus going out, digging a hole, and then having to make some decisions for yourself? And do you think there's a confidence required to do that, going out and looking at a hole?
Yeah, and I suppose some people it's just, and I was guilty of it myself when I first started. Was what you're looking at? You know, it's brown.
Yeah.
You know,
Same. I
yeah,
had the same thought.
yeah. I've spent a lot of time reading YouTube videos, all this sort of stuff, just trying to learn. Probably one of the best examples of the time, how I spend my time now is I used to pride myself on the fact I could plate meat at the farm in 50 minutes. And I'd berate myself if I'd been any longer than that. I was pretty much running, and I'm a bit older now, but it takes me 2 hours because I'm spending so long. I'll be distracted by something either on the soil or worm castings or dung beetle hole, or if I see like a geotrupid hole down the side of a dung pat, I'm pretty much on my knees rooting, and it just takes me 2 hours now. But it's more enjoyable. I often measure it like 5:30 in the morning in the summer, and bird song. The farm sort of off the back of what we've done and the way we're trying to farm now, the bird life's exploded. We've got a lot more small birds around, lots of bats. And they're here because they're here eating these insects that we've encouraged. So yeah, but we're having to just, by monitoring them and spending more time actually looking at what we're doing and looking at the fields, looking at the soil, looking at the animals and the feces. We're learning, and we're trying to, yeah, it just makes us manage the farm differently.
Yeah, totally. And I wonder when you were out looking, so the plate metering before, when you were trying to do it as fast as possible and just kind of get the results, versus now where you're scanning the field, like how do you remember what it felt like when you started to actually see things that maybe you hadn't seen before? How did that come about?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's just, yeah, you're looking at it. I'm looking for different things. I would have been running around, and I would have been, oh, there's docks there, I need to spray them, or there'll be a thistle there. How have I missed that? Whereas now I couldn't give a crap if there's a dock or a thistle in the field. Basically, it's a change of mindset, and it's a change of eyes that if you see a dock in the field, you're thinking, oh, I've maybe got low calcium, or there's maybe some compaction over there, and well, that dock's actually having a good go at correcting that compaction for me. So what harm's it doing? We've obviously got to manage. I don't want too many of them because they will be there'll be an impact on the yield of the grassland and of the cows. So we don't want too many of them. But if we can find a way to make the soils that if we can encourage the soils to not grow docks and to grow grass through a change of management and making sure we're not compacting and putting a bit of calcium on and stuff like that instead of going out with a can of spray, it's yeah. One of the biggest things I've had to learn is patience. I've never been a very patient person, and if you went out with a can of spray or a bag of nitrogen, you'd see a difference in days. Whereas now it could be years or months before you can see these changes. But
yeah, so maybe we could just talk a little bit about, I know, well, two things. One is I'm curious, maybe this first, I'm curious to hear, you said that you liked your farm to be tidy. And now you've got docks and thistles around. And how does that, like, have you changed your vision of what a healthy farm looks like? Or what is what are you aiming for now? Is it still to be tidy?
In the middle. I'm not bothered about a few thistles and a few docks. We've got goldfinches here that will eat the thistle seeds when they come up, and I'll be going down the cow track on the quad to go and shut the cows in, and there'll be a flock of 40 or 50 goldfinches will take off the top of the thistles on the side of the cow track. Whereas there never used to be a thistle there, but there also wasn't goldfinches.
Right.
So, we're looking for, I'm just looking for different things, and my eyes have changed that, I don't lose any sleep over a few docks and a few thistles. I just I tell myself now that I need to actually change the way that I'm managing that soil, and I might go into the middle of the patch of them and dig a hole and actually see what's going on in there. And then by using Soil Mentor, which I've kind of wanted to use for years, but I was too tight to pay the price. But now the government pay for it. It's brilliant. But I wouldn't be without it now. But we can record that, and I can actually look back. Going forward, I'm going to be able to look back on what we've recorded and see progress. And then, another great thing I thought, like, we rent quite a lot of land, and now when we rent farms, we'll go and we'll soil sample it straight away. We now go and dig more holes and stuff as well when we're renting them. And my plan is that, like, at the end of our term, say 5-year term, we'd have had fences and we'd had water troughs that we'd have done, and we'd have changed the way we've managed it, and the land would have looked better and greener. Whereas now we're also going to have this tool that we're going to be able to show them things they can't see with their eye. How we've improved soil, we've eliminated compaction, we've got more grass cover. I'm hoping that we'll be able to look back through the Soil Mentor app and say, it might not look, there might be a few thistles, there might be a few docks, but look at this. And how we've improved their soil asset, basically.
Totally. That's very exciting. Exciting to be able to see that difference. That's definitely one thing I've learned over time is, these kinds of observations. Not only is the farming system more complex that you're working with and you have to be responsive, but also the observations you're making also are complex. There's complexity to the information, and so actually the value of having photos of what things looked like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and seeing the progression alongside some numerical data, for me is so important. I don't know if you agree. Of photos, amazing the value.
I'm very guilty. I've never been the best at taking photos, but
okay.
Like when I go into the Soil Mentor app, it encourages you to take them, and it's an easy option. Whereas, we've been farming for 15 years, and when I took over 15 years ago, when I first started, where my milking parlour is and all the yard was a green field, and I've got no pictures of before, during. We can take a picture today, but we've got no pictures of before and during.
Right.
The farm looks totally different today to what it did 15 years ago. When I've gone and rented farms, it's only after you get to the end of your term and your 5-year term or whatever we're on, and you think, God, I've done all that fence and all these water troughs in. I didn't take a picture of the fact that the hedges were trampled by livestock or whatever, and we've now put a fence up and the hedges bushed back up and filled in or nearly filled in, and we should be taking pictures of all that as we've been going along, and that's. I know because it's in here, but
that's one thing also, I guess, is a general trend, and we're seeing more and more of is observations. Not only are they valuable to you, but they're also becoming valuable for other reasons. So whether that's something like the Soil Health Initiative, or whether that's proving soil improvement to a landowner, or whether that's you sell to a supermarket and actually, as part of their carbon emissions program, they're wanting to understand how their suppliers are improving soil. So it seems like, more and more people want to understand what's happening at farm level, and what you're doing.
If we're trialing a product or we're trying to do something different, I've now learned we need to have pictures before, during, and after, even if it's gone the wrong way, so not to do it again.
Totally.
Yeah, it's probably more important than it
Yeah,
gets away.
including.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so let me just see what I want to say. Oh yeah, I think one of my questions is in terms of what I'm hearing from you is that so the observations and what you're seeing has changed a lot, and they're core to how you decide what you're going to do. And at the same time, your learning has been a core part of that. It's kind of like the two have come together, and that the learnings have informed the observations. Who or what has been most important for your learning as you go? Have there been any, things that you would really recommend to others?
I went to. Do you remember Nicole Masters came to the UK a few years ago, and she did two-day soil courses,
Yeah.
Althorpe House. I attended both of them,
Okay.
and it was, yeah, it's just eye-opening. And what I don't think I know anymore after it, because it was just so intense, and she's so knowledgeable. But it was a really good grounding and a way to get started. And I've gone away and I've looked more, and we're finding out more. The second 2 days we were there, we went to Groundswell straight from that, and like you walk around Groundswell, everyone's got their name tag on, and everyone speaks to you.
Mhm.
It's whereas I've never really been a big one for going to shows, but if you're walking around like the Highland Show or something, whenever I have been there, no one, everyone's got their head down and they're just going across. Whereas I'd be walking from a talk to another talk at Groundswell, and I'd probably have spoke to five people just about who you are, what you do, but before you get across there, and everybody within that community is very willing to talk and willing to share and willing to teach.
Mhm.
So yeah, you always feel like you've got people that you can go and either through Twitter or X as it is now, or Facebook or something. There's always groups, and I'm on WhatsApp groups like dung beetles and stuff like that. Which, if you'd have said that to me 10 years ago, I'd have laughed at you and said, "Don't be so stupid. I would never be on anything like that." But we're on it's a group of people all over the UK, possibly even all over the world, sending pictures of dung beetles to each other, and asking questions about them, and this sort of thing. And it's like, yeah, it's just really, yeah, really, it's a totally different way to farm now.
And so I guess one thing that's always, and quite rightfully on farmers' minds is the bottom line. And how, in terms of the way you're farming now, which is not so calendar based, and more responsive, you have to like be there on the ground, making these observations. Yeah, does it change what your bottom line looks like? Is it different to before or not really?
Our yields have probably reduced slightly, milk and crops and stuff like that. We're not growing the same tonnage of grass and what have you, but we're not spending the same on, we as I say, we still buy fertilizer, but the spend is way down on where it used to be, and our actual profit has gone up.
That's nice.
Yeah, yeah. So
So,
that's
wow.
all that counts at the end of the day, isn't it? It's we won't be here next year if we're not making a profit, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally.
Mm.
And so interesting. So you'd say now the way you're farming, both your profit and what I heard also is that you have more time, or like you're more in control of your time. Like before, you felt like you were kind of running around like a headless chicken, I think it was the phrase you used.
There was
Is that?
always something to do. There was always a treatment to be put on cattle, or there was always treatment to be put on a field. It's Yeah, when we're not chasing our tail doing all that as much anymore. We spend our time differently. Instead of going and gathering a group of cattle to worm them, I'm probably gathering up fecal egg count samples and getting them
Mhm.
sent off, and then we're then having to, when the results come back, we're then having to sit and make the decision that, oh, there is a little bit of a worm burden, but maybe we can just leave them another 3 or 4 weeks retest. So we're spending our time differently.
Mhm.
Where you're having to think more, whereas before it was, it never took us long to get a group of cattle in and worm them. So you just got on with it and you just did it. Whereas now we're going out, we're spending time with the cattle, looking at them, making sure none of them got dirty backsides, taking fecal egg counts. And again, your observation on the animal, how are they performing, whether that's bringing them in, putting them over the weigh scale, all goes into whether we actually go and worm. If we end up having to worm, I now, instead of thinking, oh, that's going to cure it, I'm thinking, oh, what did I do wrong? Where did we broke a rotation somewhere, or what? Something's happened somewhere. We've left them in the field too long. They've cycled their own worm. Whatever's happened, I'm now thinking that we've made the mistake and we need to make sure that we don't do that again.
Yeah. So you're learning. It's like always learning, always a learning opportunity, and figuring out what happened to do things differently next time.
Yeah.
Crazy. So different. So what would you say to a farmer who feels like, maybe they, I know you said that sometimes people perceive your love of dung beetles as something hippie-ish or something. But what would you say to people who feel like this all sounds just so outside of how they farm, or maybe they've had a look at a few dung beetles, but then didn't know where to go next, or didn't feel confident making observations about their soil in their fields?
Ask someone. There's always people out there that will either come with you and dig a hole, or tell you about a dung beetle, or tell you, advise you on wormers and stuff like that. It might not be your own vet, because the vet, I've actually changed vets, but the vet I used to use was, we should worm the cattle every 6 weeks with ivermectin, which we were going to end up with not only were we harming everything beyond the animal, I could see we were heading towards a resistance problem. It was crazy. And part of the reason we've tried to change what we're doing is that if we do have an issue, I want to make sure that if we hit them with a worm, or whichever worm it is, I want to make sure it works. And it's a fire break. It will resolve the issue, and we can then go away and figure out what we did wrong. But them animals need to be producing, they need to be growing, or they need to be producing milk for me to make money. Because we have loans to pay. I've got a family to feed. We've got to make sure that the animals are performing, and also minimize our effect on the environment, on insects, on everything else.
No, that makes sense. And well, we'll see. I think there's a few questions coming in. I'm just going to ask you a couple more questions, and then I'll go to different people's questions that they've shared and asked. But I wanted to know a little bit about, I was referring to this a little bit earlier, but you told me that one of the most noticeable changes on your farm is that 10 years ago, you would have classed the farm as a wet farm.
Yeah.
But then due to improvements in soil health, you've been able to increase the carrying capacity, and you have cows out more of the year. And can you share a little bit more about that and that change?
I think that a lot of that is to do with putting more diversity into the swards, and not being scared to trample a little bit of grass into the soil. We've increased worm activity, like the dung beetles as well. They're digging down into the soil. If we get the big geotroopids, that they can dig down up to a meter and a half, and they're aerating. They're allowing places for the water to get down into the soil. Because a wet field isn't water in the top, is water in the top 2 inches. It's not the water's not getting down through the soil profile, is it? So the soil seems to have improved, and we seem to be able to get out. When we had a wet spring last year, spring 24, and I never missed a grazing day. I was very careful when they went out, which paddocks they went to on which days and stuff like that. But we managed to get them out at least once for 2 hours every single day. and that like it's 200 cows by the end of the calving spell as well. So it's a big herd of cows. We've got cow tracks. We've got multiple entries and exits into fields, so we can get them. So they're minimising how many times they go through gateways to reduce damage. They're in there for the 2 hours. They go out. They're really hungry. They put their heads down. They eat, and then you go and get them before they get bored and start having to wander around and lie down, and get them back in the shed, back stood on concrete where they're not doing damage. And yeah, the soil just seems to have massively improved.
Amazing. And so the ways well, obviously you're having a general assessment of the soil improving because the cows can go out in these, wet environments when previously that wouldn't have been possible. But also you mentioned like earthworms, and earlier you mentioned rooting depth. What are some of those kinds of observations that you've been doing along the way, or maybe only more recently you've started doing them? Maybe you could just share a bit about.
I have always done them, but recording them is the one thing I've changed. I've always dug holes. I've always been looking for worms, because they're a really good indicator of soil health. If you've got a healthy population of worms, they're cycling that organic matter down into the soil. Again, they're opening channels, which is air and water able to get down through the soil. So there's no harm in having them there, is there? And then rooting depth as well, as like when we were just using ryegrass, it's only rooting 2 inch. We were going into paddocks with 3,000 kilos of cover on, which yay big, and grazing it down every 21 days, and we were knocking the roots hard every 21 days, and even just going out to 24 days has made a big difference in that. We're still not fully there. We have started to introduce some multi-species lays, so we've got some chicory, and if you dig down on a chicory plant, I've snapped them off at 18 inches deep, so it's down there. The cows don't really eat the chicory, and I put it in there. The purpose of putting it in there is that I don't really mind if it dies off after a couple of years, because it's put a big channel down, it's opened the soil up, and if it dies and that root rots away, it's going to leave that big channel there. Something else will go down that hole. Then we've mixed it up with a bit of plantain, and then we put some timothy and stuff like that back into the mixtures, and it's given a variety of roots and a denser root mass, which is all allowing the water to get down through the soil better. And the denser that root mass and the plant population, the better the carrying capacity of the soil as well. If you get a wet day or a dry day, it works both ways. It's either letting it down through, or it's holding it to allow us to withstand the dry spells better.
Totally. Yeah, I think one thing I would say is that you're clearly very confident in understanding why you're doing each of these observations, because you're showing me as you're talking about it, you're linking the earthworms to water and to the, you want things to be able to go down, as well as the rooting depth. And would you say, again, in a way, it comes back to the education side of it all, is that, part of making observations and making them be powerful for you, is actually starting to understand the why behind them.
Yeah, and probably one of the main whys, and a massive thing that I've changed is that I used to spend my time being worried about the cow and making sure that the cow had everything she needed and the grass was perfect for the cow. Whereas I've now probably gone totally the other way. Not that I don't care about my cows, but I've started to look at the soil, and if we can get the soil right, the plants are better, healthier. The cow then eats a healthier plant, eats a healthier diet, and the cow naturally becomes better, and then the cow will perform as well. So I've found that by improving the soil, and we're nowhere near perfect. We're nowhere near perfect. We've got miles to go yet. I'd be bored stiff if we got if we thought we got to the end of the road. But by getting that right, the animals naturally perform, and yeah, so we're looking at things from totally the opposite side of probably what I used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess again that is part of why you value going and digging those holes, is because actually your whole mindset is that the soil is essentially the health system for your whole farm.
Yeah.
It's starting there, and so you need to check and make sure that that's working for you, basically.
As a farmer, it's our biggest asset, isn't it? Whether we're growing a crop or we're growing an animal, it's our biggest asset. And at the end of the day, it's only mine for my lifetime, isn't it? So I've got to look after it as best as I can, so I can hopefully hand it on to the next generation.
Totally.
And hand them on the education to look after it and to, treasure it basically, and make sure that we're regenerating it or building it. We're not degenerating it and losing it.
Yeah.
So that's another thing with on the cereal ground. I make sure that we've always got a living root in the ground. We're putting cover crops in. We have got a little bit of winter barley this year. I haven't grown any for years, but I put some winter barley in this year. But I've got a multi-species cover crop in. It's done really well this year. It was a good harvest time. We've got the cereal in. We've got the cover crops in really good conditions, and we got rain not long after, and they've flown. So that's going to give us some grazing as well. So we'll get the livestock back onto that ground and get that cycle through an animal, produce some protein, and put some muck back onto the ground. And it's just we've got to look after that soil, haven't we? And it's given us life.
Absolutely. Okay, I do have more questions, but I'm going to go to other people's questions, and then maybe I can ask you those if we have time at the end, if that's okay.
Okay.
So this is a question from Alistair. Alistair asks, how many species do you have in your pasture, and how did you increase the diversity when you started?
How many species have we got? I couldn't give you an exact answer, I'm afraid. I've done all sorts. We've put like clover seed through an animal, so fed it with the feed in the milking parlour, and so the cows have gone out and pooed it onto the ground basically, and done some reseeding for us. We've overseeded with grass harrows, and we've direct drilled. We've done full reseeds, spray off and reseed with multi-species. There's one field I had to run a subsoiler through to give that root, and we had a pan, so we went out, dug holes, had a pan, put subsoil through, put these things in. So yeah, there will be there's a mixture of clover. That's the other thing we had with the sprays. We were spending money putting clovers into the fields, and then we were spending a bit more money to go out with a sprayer to kill the docks and thistles and killing the clover. So we've got mixture clover, red, white clovers, mostly grazing varieties, and then we've got plantain, chicory. We don't really put too many herbs in, especially on the grazing platform for the dairy cows, because there's a concern about milk taint. We don't want to put anything in there that's going to risk putting a taste through the milk, so we have to watch what we put there. Not afraid to put some like bird's foot trefoil and some other bits and pieces in on some of the beef and young stock ground. But yeah, basically trying to get as many things as we can into it. The grazing platform for the cows, I'm always really careful of them because of that. I don't want any flavour through the milk.
That makes sense. And so in terms of all the different methods you use to get that diversity in there, has any one of them kind of stood out as a better option for you, or how do you know which ones are working best?
Putting it through the cow, it's cheap and simple, but it's very much, you end up with like a patch.
Yeah.
It's not even across the field. So yeah, I don't know, that it worked, but it was very patchy, and yeah, it's there, so it worked. We've had success and we've had failure with every single method.
Okay, yeah.
Basically, it's lots of it's down to the weather, how you manage it afterwards. Like if we're overseeding, I try to give it a really good hard grazing with the cows, and then we'll overseed or direct drill, and then I try to go back in a week or 10 days later,
like try to nail it down with the cows again to try to set the grass back to allow the new species to come up through. And we've had some really good success, but we've had some total failures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my experience too with
putting
in like great. Okay, I will move on to the next question. So this is from Anna. Which soil mentor tests are your favorite to run, and which ones do you feel give you most information about the condition of the farm overall?
Oh, obviously digging a hole, and then worm counts is a nice, simple, and a really good example of initial soil health. And then root and depth is an important one that I try to always do, and trying to, especially total root and depth, because that's the signal of where it's going. We're obviously doing the 80% and the total. I run infiltration, but I quite like doing infiltration when it goes well. when it doesn't go down, it's like, oh,
I know. It is painful, isn't it, when it doesn't go down?
Yeah. And then I'm also trying to look at ground cover, because I think that the ground cover is really important for for stopping rain and what have you, compacting soil. Yeah.
Totally. Great. Thank you. And then Anna has another question, which is, have you noticed any changes in the milk quality, so protein or fat levels, for example, which have occurred when you started implementing your land management changes?
I'd have to look back. We've got very good milk constituents, which I've won the creamery do like a set of prizes for highest fat, highest protein, highest milk price, lowest cell count, and lowest back discount every year. And last year we won highest fat, highest protein, and highest milk price. This year we won one of the fat and protein. I can't remember which, because I never made it to the presentation, and we won the highest average milk price. And as far as I'm concerned, the highest milk price one is the only one I really. So we have got a good high solids. We're currently. I've got a text message this morning with our fat and protein, so I can actually tell you what we're running at the minute.
Okay, great.
We've obviously got a group of cows housed. We've got 120 cows still out of grass, which are milked once a day, which are the spring calving. And then with some of the better cows, some of the spring calves that are still doing plenty of milk, and the autumn group are in the shed being milked twice a day. We were running at 5.34 fat and 4.14 protein, and the cell count's 118. So.
Great. For all the dairy farmers out there, that means a lot. And for non-dairy farmers, it probably means less.
Nothing.
But the fact that you've been winning awards for having the highest average protein or fat levels is obviously a sign that you're doing something right. Definitely. And I guess that's one thing I've often heard from dairy farmers is they can't risk reducing the quality of their grass or the quantity of their grass, because they risk reducing the quality of the milk and the yield. So you did comment that you had a lower yield.
Yeah, we're probably on the yield like around 4,800 litres. Through the summer, I did miss this, but through the summer we were only milking 3 and 2, so we were milking 3 times in every 48 hours. So we milked at 4 a.m., 4 p.m., and then 9 o'clock the following day. So it wasn't an even split in hours, but that takes the yield back a little bit, but it allowed us time. Time's just so valuable. But we are only getting 4,800 litres, which is why I try to prioritise and try to make sure we need a high value litre. We couldn't deal with a poor. If we're not getting yield, we'd need quantity. Sorry. If we're not getting yield, so we need quality.
Yeah.
And the opposite would be true the other way around, if you know. Of course. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Okay, from Sinead in the comments, how are your cows taking to the different species like plantain or chicory? You already suggest they don't really graze the chicory, but do they graze them as well as perennial ryegrass? And are you seeing a difference in your milk quality? Okay, well, since adding the diverse swards. So you kind of answered that already, but in terms of the different species?
Yeah, like I say, the chicory. If you hit the chicory right and it's lush and leafy, but it seems to be there's a very small window of when that's right. I have done a bit of messing. Like I've some of the multi-species fields, I've shut them off and given them like a 80 or 90-day rest period, and that allowed them to get really big. And a few neighbours have seen me put dairy cows onto it, and they really makes them talk, which I quite like doing. But I would slam the whole herd, so 200 odd cows, onto like barely an acre for 2 hours, to trample it and eat as much as they could. But my main thing was I'd allowed the plants to set seed, and I let them in, trampled it like mad, basically. Then get them back off, put them onto really good grass, then the rocket fuel. And it didn't really affect yield when I did it. But the first year I done it with half of a field, and the diversity and like the amount of them species that are in that half of the field now compared to the other half. All through this summer, there's been a visible dark green line across the field.
Wow.
Where I'd had the fence line. So the bottom half of the field I grazed in the same rotation as the rest of the farm, and then I'd done this with the top half. So I'd done another field this year. I'd done a full 4-acre paddock this year, allowed it to get big, allowed it to set seed, and then trampled it. And I'm hoping it looks horrific after you finish. But when it comes back, and if I'd managed to pull my finger at my backside and get some more tests done, I want to do infiltration, I want to do root and depth and everything like that in the two halves of the field, because I reckon there'll be a vast difference, even worm numbers and stuff as well. So.
Amazing that you can already see a line difference like a year or this much later in time.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, great, thank you. And then David, have you found or are you measuring bricks? And then if you are, have you found an increase in bricks? And what ranges are you finding?
I've only started measuring this year, so I've not really got a comparison back. So going forward, I've been recording it in Soil Mentor. Going forward, I'm hoping we will have a change. The big bricks is great, and like the main thing I use it for is to differentiate the bricks between a weed. So I'll take a bricks reading of the whichever weed's predominant in the fields, whether that be dandelion or dock or thistle, which isn't very nice or very easy to take a bricks off.
No, it's not.
And I'll compare it to the grass and clover, because I can't remember, is it a score of 2 or 3 difference. We need the grass to be higher, then we're doing the right thing and we're encouraging grass growth rather than weed growth. So that's the main thing I try to differentiate. I find there can be such a variation at the time of day when you go take your bricks of your grass. Obviously, like if I went out at 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening on a glorious sunny day, I'm going to have a higher reading than I would have if I'd have been at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. But that's just nature, isn't it? But
and you're right, exactly. Like the bricks, it peaks actually in the middle of the day usually, and then the plant starts putting its sugars down into its roots after the middle of the day to prepare for the evening.
It's one thing if I could, I need to arrange my time better, but I need to start to, like with the young stock and the beef cattle, we need to start to go move them at 2 o'clock in the afternoon instead of. We try to get everything done in the morning so that we can get on with everything else, but we'd probably see quite a marked benefit from moving the cattle at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and put them onto a naturally higher sugar grass. Because by the time this comes around to 2 o'clock, they've probably eaten a good chunk of the grass that we've put them on.
Totally.
Yeah,
it is true. And it's always interesting to see how animals move, like when they are, even when they're set stock, see how they move. And, apparently they do know where the higher bricks or the higher sugar plants are. And at different times of the day, that kind of stuff. Okay, another question from Anna. Do you think there's enough recognition from the supply chain for your commitment to how you're managing the farm? And are you able to inspire other dairy farmers on the Isle of Man? And has the government initiative on the Isle of Man helped to get farmers interested in soil health monitoring?
think it's had. I think the scheme has had quite a good uptake among dairy farmers. Recognition from the milk pool, I don't know really. It's difficult on the island because it's such a small creamery. There's 20, I think there's 28 dairy farms, and there's just over 20 million litres. So it's a tiny pool compared to like the UK or Ireland or anywhere like that. It's a tiny pool of milk. Every farm on the island grazes cows, so there's no housed herds on the island. So everybody they must be paying some attention to soil health, I'd have thought. We host quite a lot of visits, so we have quite a lot of I've got a forest school that the local school use, and then I've hosted the parents from the school. We've hosted a lot of people. I've lost count of how many people, and like cubs and scouts and brownies, all these sorts of people we've had over the years, and so I tried to spread our message through that sort of way of communicating what we're doing on our farm. I don't know how that would compare to others over here. I don't know really.
That sounds great. And I guess, yeah, it feels like hopefully the Soil Health Initiative also, gets people talking and thinking about why, or at least getting out in the field. And I guess, in order to receive the benefit, you have to dig some holes. So you have to look.
Yes.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, hopefully people will come along with it and use it, and I'll keep being able to have soil milk for free.
Of course. Great. Okay, thank you so much, David. That was absolutely brilliant. And we have just 3 minutes left. Hopefully I answered everyone's questions. And I just wanted to share a few thoughts about our next series, which is coming up. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And yeah, here it is. So on Tuesday next week, the 11th of November at 5 p.m. GMT, we will have Claire Hill on here, sharing about her experiences, learning about the power of observation on her farm, Plantain Farm, and prior to that, where she was working at FAI Farms in Oxfordshire. I think she even visited the Isle of Man, so maybe some of the Isle of Man farmers know her. Great. So yeah, if you'd like to find out, and if anyone would like to find out more about Soil Mentor and how it can support you in building an observation mindset and making your observations as valuable as possible, then please do email us on info@vitacycle.com, or you can head to our website, soils.vitacycle.com, and sign up to hear more there. If you do email us, we are very responsive, and we'll get back to you and answering any of your questions. And David, how can people, if they want to hear more and learn more from your way of farming, is there any way they can follow you? Are you?
No, because I'm useless at doing social media and stuff like that. Yeah, I've never been very good at that sort of thing. I have got a Facebook account, but it's only in my name, which is
Got it.
But yeah, if anybody wants to get in touch, if they either email you and you can send them my email address or whatever.
For sure.
I'm more than happy to speak to people, but I am useless at pictures and social media like that. So.
Absolutely. No, too busy looking at the soil. That's a good thing. Yeah, so great. Well, thank you so much, David. I really, really appreciate, sharing kind of the nitty-gritty of what you're doing and why, and some of the realities on the farm, and just how your observations are really framing, your day-to-day approach. That's really cool to hear. And also thank you everyone for such great questions, and for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And hopefully see some of you again on Tuesday next week at 5 p.m. GMT.
Thank you.